So good evening and welcome. I didn't know how the turnout would be Thursday on a Columbus Day weekend with lots of people traveling, and as always, the island surprises me. I'm thrilled that you're able to be here. It's going to be taped, and then we'll put it up on the guidance website. So I'll turn it over to the guidance department to talk about financial aid.
Thank you. Of course, thank you, John. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. It's just like what John was saying, I know that there might be other more exciting things to do, but I can tell you that this is more beneficial than anything else that you're going to be doing tonight, so that's good. We are lucky enough to have Julie Shields from MEFA, which is the Massachusetts Education Financing Authority. So what's really great is she is a innocent bystander to the process of not getting involved with who gets money, who doesn't get money. She's not trying to sell anything. They're a nonprofit who is just here to help us Massachusetts families figure out how to get the most amount of money for your student as they're going off to college. So she's been here for the last couple years. We're psyched to have her back, and I will let her take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you. I guess I'm going to kind of stand here and try to talk into the microphone. So because it's being recorded, is it working?
Yep.
Oh, it is. Great. Okay. So happy to be here. And I will share that my background is that I've been doing this type of work for about 30 years. I worked at a college, and then I worked at the College Board, and I worked at some student loan organizations. And so in addition to my current job at MEFA, I just like to share whatever I can to help us get through this process. And on the personal side, I have a senior in high school as well. So I have a senior in college too. So I'm right in this with you on the personal side. And you'll hear me share some anecdotes that I've learned along the way on that side too. But if I can just ask, who are parents of seniors? Okay, most of you, that's great. And parents of juniors? Perfect. All right, so parents of seniors, everything that I'm going to talk about, this is showtime. You need to go home and get going on all of it. And parents of juniors, you can be a little more relaxed and take it all in, and you'll be well prepared next year.
Stress me out.
No, I really see it as really my role, because I have seen this and worked with thousands of families for 30 years. It's going to be fine. It really is. And I do know that, even though I'm in it with you, so I am in that busy time of beginning of senior year with my own daughter, but it really is going to be fine. So I believe that. All right, and I'll tell you also about some help that you'll be able to receive along the way. We'll talk for however long it takes tonight. The slides take about an hour, but then we'll answer all your questions. But then, this is MEFA, not-for-profit in Massachusetts, and we, and my team especially, we're the college planning team, we just give free assistance all the way through the process. So when you leave here tonight, there might still be questions along the way. And you can call us, you can email us, and we'll help you with anything that comes up this year, when your child is going to college, all of that. And one good way to just get connected with everything that MEFA does is if you go to the MEFA website and scroll down, it will say that brown box there, receive tips by email. If you give us your email and the grade of your student, then twice a month, we send you an email that tells you everything you need to be doing at that exact stage for your student. So if you're a parent of a junior, it's going to talk about things like maybe test prep or questions to ask when you go on a college visit, things like that, tips on writing the college essay. If you're a parent of a senior, it will get into this financial aid stuff now, saying, here are tips on filing the FAFSA and any updates. So I've never had a parent say that isn't useful, so I just put that out there as some additional free resources. So we're going to talk about what financial aid is available, how you will apply for it, and then from the college perspective, how the colleges make those decisions about giving financial aid awards to your students. And then I talked about the free resources, and we'll also talk a little bit about how do families pay for college. We know these college costs, we read about them, we see them. How are families today piecing this together and paying for college? So we'll get into that near the end. So basically, when we talk about financial aid, we're talking about any money that is going to help you pay the college bill. And that really comes in three categories. The first being the best, grants and scholarships. That is money that is awarded to your student and that they don't have to repay. So that's really what you're looking for. However, when you get a financial aid award from a college, it's really going to include all of these types of aid, probably, hopefully, but probably. So it's also going to include possibly something called work study, which is an amount of money that your student would work when they get to campus. And usually that's used to pay miscellaneous expenses, shampoo, pizza, maybe some transportation. I like to say it's the money that they can earn for their spending while they're at college, so they're not calling you to ask for money. But it's a good source of income for them to pay those expenses when on campus. So on the financial aid form, when it says, would you like work study, I highly recommend that you check yes. If you check no, it doesn't mean you're going to get more grants. So it's just worth having that option for your student. And then the other piece that's up here that really doesn't seem like financial aid, but it is federal student loans. So, and these are very specific loans, not all of the loans out there, but the loans that are awarded to your student, just in your student's name, federal student loans, are going to be part of that financial aid package. And I'm going to show you in one of the next couple of slides all the details about what those specific loans are like and why they are part of this package. And this is kind of the mix. So when you get a financial aid award, it will include some student loans, hopefully some scholarships and grants from the college or university. It could include some federal grants, some state grants. We talked about the work study piece, and then sometimes private outside grants too that we'll talk about. And then colleges, so when you go through this process that I'm about to describe, colleges pull all of it together. They pull all of the money from the federal government, from the state, from the college itself, together in one package. So you're applying for everything. And colleges award their money based on two reasons. And so the first is merit. We're going to talk more about financial need tonight and how that works, but many colleges have merit-based funds that they award each year. And they award them to many students. And we used to think of merit aid as, I'll say, the football scholarship or the band scholarship. And there's still money attached to some things like that. But really, it's a lot of academics too. So if your student falls in the higher end of the admissions pool at a certain college in a certain year, and that could even be as much as the whole top half, many colleges have merit aid grants and scholarships that they give to your student because they want your student to attend. So anything that puts your student in a good position for admission at a certain college can also help on the financial side. And then the other way they award financial aid is based on your financial need. And that's what we're really going to talk about right now. But that is, you're going to complete these financial aid forms, put a lot of information on them, and they're going to determine, a financial need for you. And that's how a lot of other financial aid is awarded. And I mentioned again the categories where all of this money is coming from: federal government, the state, and the colleges and universities themselves. Now, the one type of financial aid that's kind of outside of this process we're going to talk about is the last one, the other agencies, outside private money. So there are a couple of sources, couple of ways to think about that. One is your student can do some scholarship searches online. There are some websites, actually MIFA has a website that is, I can give you that email, it's mifapathway.org, where you can look for some scholarships there. The College Board has some scholarship searches. There's another one called fastweb.com. So there are many places you can look for scholarships. A student can type in information about themselves, their interest, and find a list and just look through and see if there's anything that they could apply for. It's worth looking at that a little bit because there are a lot of scholarships out there. I find that students are even more successful when they look, I'm going to call it, closer to home. So are there any, I know we can talk about maybe a couple of the things here on Nantucket. I know there are a couple of organizations on Nantucket that award scholarships. Do you want to say it?
Well, I can say that we are beyond fortunate to be living on an island that there are an extreme amount of scholarship resources. We are so lucky that the amount of money that all the private organizations have far surpasses any other town surrounding us, off island, whatever. So that process, that's the one thing that a lot of students will come to us and say, my parents came to ask me, I need to find scholarships right now, today. And that's the one thing, which is fine, that's good that you're telling them to do that. But that's the one thing that we can put off. That doesn't even get posted until March, say. March, end of February at the earliest, usually around March. And that's because we send out the invitations to all the outside organizations, and then they respond to us with if they're going to continue with the scholarship and such. So we will go over and we'll have information sessions with your students at the time. We're happy to meet with you, but again, this is one thing that we don't have to worry about right now. And with those scholarships, I always say to the students, the more you apply to, the more you will get. So it's so important for them to go on, take the time at that point, because it's March, you've just finished applying for college, they're tired, they've written enough essays, and they say, I don't want to write any more essays, and I say, stay in on the Friday night and write the extra essays. It's worth the money. The more you apply to, the more you'll get. So stay tuned for that. But like I said, we're very lucky that we have a big pot of money here on Nantucket.
That's great. So then I told you I'd talk a little bit more about that loan that you'll see in a lot of the financial aid packages. So the student loan is in the student's name. It has a fixed interest rate. That changes every year, but right now it's 5.05%. And it has limits, which is a good thing. So students as a freshman can borrow $5,500, as a sophomore $6,500, and as a junior and a senior $7,500. So if a student were to take the full amount of the federal student loan during college, they would graduate with about $27,000. And that would be about a $300 payment after graduation. So it's just good for your students to know that and understand all of that. A positive about this loan is that, well, they're not paying it while they're in school, and we'll talk about subsidized and unsubsidized in a minute. But the other main positive is that after graduation, they have some choices in how they repay those loans. So if they graduate from college and get a job and they have a situation where they can make that $300 payment, that's great, because then they'll pay that loan off as quickly as possible. But if they aren't able to have a job and a living situation that allows them to make that payment, there are other options for repayment, and one of them is income contingent. So they can sign up for the income contingent repayment plan, which allows them to keep that payment lower. Of course, they're going to be paying for a longer period of time, but at least they're able to do that. So it has flexibility, unlike any other loans, and that's why I keep these in a category by themselves. One other piece I'll mention is subsidized and unsubsidized. That if you qualify your family qualifies on the basis of financial need, some of that loan, up to $3,500 the first year, can be subsidized, meaning that no interest accrues while the student is in school. On an unsubsidized portion, or if you don't qualify and it's all unsubsidized, then interest does begin to accrue. The student doesn't make a payment until graduation, but that's the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized. So subsidized is, you really want that loan, but if you don't qualify, you can still get the unsubsidized loan. So, okay, so how do you apply for all of this money? I guess the first step is just to get organized, just the same way the student will have to be really organized with the admissions process in finding out deadlines, requirements, does the school need 2 letters of recommendation? Does the school need an interview? Do they take SAT or ACT scores? All of that. For financial aid, they need to find out a couple of key pieces of information. Number 1, what's the financial aid due date, deadline date? And 2, what forms are required? And if the student is applying early to any institutions, make sure they're writing down the early financial aid date. And then the goal for all of you is just to make sure that you apply for financial aid by that earliest due date. And truthfully, the forms are available now, and you're going to be, if you're a parent of a senior, you're going to be using 2017 income tax return information. So I think for most of you, that's probably done, locked up, and you have that. So it makes it easy. So my recommendation would be to just some night soon get a big cup of coffee and sit down and get the forms done. Because then you'll make sure that everything is done before any earlier deadline. So when your student looks to see what forms are required, they're going to find out that every college requires the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So you have to do the FAFSA. It's online at fafsa.gov. They'll complete it every year, and it's the student and the parent complete it together. The first step before completing it, the student and a parent have to have an FSA ID. It's a Federal Student Aid ID. And all it really is a username and a password. But I will tell you, it's key. And for all the parents that I've spoken with, this can end up being a hard part of applying if you don't hold on to it, know what it is. So have your student sit down, create an FSA ID, you create one also, and then put it in a really safe place so you have it. And this FSA ID is going to stay with both the student and with you for a long time. So the student will use this always when they connect with the federal system. If they're paying off loans, anything, they'll have their FSA ID. And you will use it if you have other students coming up in the future. Or if you had students in the past, you can keep your same FSA ID. So just go in, create the ID, and then you'll complete the FAFSA online. And I said it's easy enough. I say that, but it's easy compared to the next form I'm going to tell you about. But it's not simple. It's like any federal form or something. It can be complicated, so be patient. But if you have your 2017 income right there, that makes it easier. And even better, there's something called an IRS data retrieval tool. So you get to a point in the form and it says, do you want to just bring your information in? And you can press a button and it will say you're leaving the site, you're going out to the IRS, and then it populates all of your information. So I would highly suggest that you do that as well, because that makes it the whole process simple. So go and do that, and you will notice, then you can just skip through the form, but you'll notice you can't see the data that comes in from the IRS data retrieval tool, so you're not able to say that's correct. You're just skipping through. And that was done as a security measure. So the first year when they created this process to make it easier, there had been a data breach, and so that's why you can't see the information that comes forward. But it's there, I hope. Okay, so that's that. And the type of information that you're going to put on this form, you're going to put your citizenship information, you're going to put parent income, student income. You're going to put parent assets like cash, checking, savings, investments. What you're not going to put as far as assets are, you're not going to put your primary residence. The FAFSA does not ask you any questions about your primary residence, so that's good. The other amount you're not going to put any retirement accounts that you have. So you don't have to report retirement assets on the FAFSA either. You do have to, if in 2017, which are the numbers you're going to use, if you, during that calendar year, put some away for retirement for that year, it will ask you for that amount to be added back, just so they get a full picture of your 2017 income. But that's it. You don't have to put the amount of any of your retirement accounts. And then you put the number of people in your family and the number of students who are going to be in college in that year that you're applying for aid. So then you'll see that every college requires that form. You have to do that form. You'll see that some colleges require another form called the CSS profile. That's mainly public schools, public institutions just use the FAFSA. I think the only two public institutions in the country that use this additional form might be Michigan and North Carolina state universities, but that's it. So all other public institutions just use the FAFSA and you're good. But a lot of the private colleges in Massachusetts and in New England also require this other form. So if your college, if the student's applying to colleges that require it, you have to do this other form too. And you can find that out either on the college website, or if you go to the College Board website, which is here, the cssprofile.org, it will give you a list of the colleges that require the profile. And you only will send it to the colleges that require it. Now, this form does charge a fee. It can be free if your family receives an SAT fee waiver or qualifies based on the information in the form. It can be free, but if you don't qualify for a fee waiver, then it costs $25 to send the information to one school and $16 to other schools. But the colleges that require this form usually do give out a lot of their own grants and scholarships, so that's a good thing. Why, you ask, probably why another form? And it's because those colleges that give out a lot of their own grants and scholarships just feel like the information on the FAFSA isn't enough. So for example, the CSS profile is going to ask you about your primary residence. So it will ask you what it's worth and what's owed on it. And then that equity is considered as an asset. It will also ask you more about a business if you own your own business. So that's another piece. And then it also asks, let me go back again to talk about the FAFSA, to say that if parents are divorced or separated when filing the FAFSA, then it's the custodial parent, which the definition of that is the parent that the student lived with more in the last year. It's just the custodial parent and student that will file the FAFSA. Now, if the custodial parent is remarried, that's who files the FAFSA, and the other parent doesn't. But and that's true with the CSS profile too. But with the CSS profile form, they're also going to have the other parent file a profile form. I'll stop for a minute because I know that's a lot. Was that all clear? Okay, yeah. So, in other words, the CSS profile is going to get home information, business information, and then information from both parents, even if divorced or separated. And the colleges that give out all of that extra aid feel like they need that. On the bottom, you can see that one other piece that some colleges, very few, but it's worth just looking for. Some colleges might have a one-page financial aid application additional to fill out for a scholarship or something. Just have your student look at those websites and make sure that you don't miss some other type of a scholarship form. So then, after you apply, and I guess I didn't talk about this either. On these forms, you're then going to type in the schools that this information should go to. So then all of this information gets to the colleges electronically. You get an acknowledgement saying, you know, your FAFSA's done and your CSS profile is done. And then the colleges sometimes come back to you for information. Sometimes it's a back and forth process. What I like to share is that, again, because I'm at the same stage of life as you guys are, I know what our kids' email boxes look like at this time with all this college stuff that they can't even get through. But what's really important is once a student applies to a college, it's important to look at the emails that come back from the colleges they applied to. So if we can encourage that, because you don't want to miss an important email that might be about something, a follow-up on some of this. So that's key. I'll add this too, and we can talk more about this afterwards. The CSS profile form, besides collecting much more information, it does, in a good way, it has space to write additional information in too, whereas the FAFSA doesn't. The FAFSA is just numbers. So if you have any special circumstances or anything you want to share with the college that gives some additional financial information, the CSS profile lets you do that. If you have that and your student is only applying to FAFSA schools, you can also write a letter to those financial aid offices just to add anything that you want to share when they're looking at your file. So then, I feel like as parents, you have two really critical times in this financial aid process. One is to get all these forms in on time. And then the second is in the spring, comparing the awards. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So you have a little bit of a break after you get these forms in. And now we'll talk about what does the college do to decide how to give you an award. So the college has to figure out how much does it cost a student to go to school here for a year. So they come up with what's called a cost of attendance, and it's everything that it's going to cost the student to be there. If the student is on campus, then it's going to be room and board, it's going to be any transportation, all of that. So that's first. And then from the information you put on the financial aid forms, the financial information, it's run through a formula and a number comes out at the bottom. And that number is called your EFC, or your expected family contribution. So that's a number that it's thought that you as a family can contribute to those costs. And I will share up front, this number, EFC, could be 0, and if it is, that's fantastic. If it's anything more than 0, it's going to feel like too much, because that's just the way it is. And this EFC number is not probably not a welcome sight. I sometimes tell people, be sitting down when you see what it is. And I'll share where it comes from a little bit more, but basically it's not a number that anyone expects you have ready to write a check. It's just comparing you to all other families and how you can contribute to these costs over time based on the information that you put in there. So that's what that number is. For parents of juniors especially, but anyone else too, if you want to get a sense of what that number is, you can go to the College Board website, Big Future, and you can complete an EFC calculator just to get a sense. And also, all colleges have something called a net price calculator on their websites. So if you just go to a college website, type net price calculator, that will bring you to a calculator where you can put in information, as you will on a financial aid form, and then that actually will show you an estimate of a financial aid award that your family specifically might be able to get at that college. So these are just tools. Personally, I haven't said, I think I told you, I have a senior in college, senior in high school. I haven't said to my kids when I played with these calculators, don't apply to this school because the net price calculator says we won't get any money. I haven't said that because these are estimates, you never know. But what I have said is, okay, it looks like at this institution, if you get in here, they're not showing that they're going to give us a whole lot of money here. So I wouldn't get your heart set on that. If the package comes back like this, it probably isn't possible for you to attend that school, and probably not a good idea financially. So make sure you have other colleges on your list that you love just as much. So I think that these can help with those conversations, without just taking a college off the list, but at least having those conversations. I think the more you can have those conversations, and the more you can help your student not fall in love with one school, and even as parents to not fall in love with one school, the more options and choices that you have. And we all know there are tons of great schools out there, so it's just making sure all the schools on the list are exciting to the student in some way. So then, I mentioned this, so there's the cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution, and that is your financial aid eligibility. And that's what the college then works to make a financial aid award to meet that financial aid eligibility. There are some colleges, mostly the very elite colleges, that promise to meet 100% of need for every single student. And in that case, they would give you an award that meets that full financial aid eligibility. But that's only about 50 colleges in the whole country that promise to meet the full need of every student. So other colleges try to do their best in meeting that, but sometimes don't meet that 100%. So you'll see that in action here. And this is just an example. I do get a lot of questions from parents saying, I saved some money, maybe I shouldn't have saved money. Is that going to hurt me in this financial aid process? So I like to show this, that if you have saved for anything, you're going to be happy that you saved every penny. And that your savings is counted much less than your income in this formula. So this just shows three families with the same income, $75,000, and very different assets. And you can see that EFC does go up as assets go up, but it goes up in a very small way. So the person with $75,000 in savings versus zero is only really being expected to contribute $2,700 more per year. So your savings, and that person has some funding to be able to pay. So savings is good. Versus, this is a hard slide to see, but it just shows that as your income goes up, the expectation of how much you're expected to pay before financial aid kicks in goes up in a pretty steep way. Yeah.
Excuse me, are the family combined parent incomes net or gross numbers?
Yes, so that is, I'm just trying to think of how the formula goes. These are gross numbers. Just, as a basic example. So, good. So you can see that here are 3 examples of families and how that EFC bumps up greatly with increases in income. And then this is another example of how all of that works and fits together. The next couple of slides show that. Let's say as a family you have an expected family contribution of $5,000. This is how it would work if your student applies to colleges at different costs. So let's say your student applies to College D on the right, and let's say that's a community college. And so your expected family contribution is $5,000, and the cost is $5,000, so the student wouldn't be eligible for any need-based aid at that institution. But if that same student applied to a college that costs $70,000, there's a potential for the student to receive financial aid in the amount of $65,000 because there's that much financial aid eligibility. So this would be a reason not to say to a student, don't apply to that college, it's $70,000, who can afford that? Otherwise, we'd all be saying that to our students. You really, until the financial aid awards come back and did that college give $65,000, or did they not meet full need and they gave 50,000 or whatever? Until you have those numbers in front of you, it's hard to make a final decision. Again, that's why it's good to have options and choices. So this is how, say, kind of a metaphor of how a college would make a financial aid award package. This college costs $45,000, and so the analogy is that the college needs to fill up this bucket with $45,000 for your student to be able to attend. So the first thing they put in is your expected family contribution. Then hopefully they give you a scholarship and a grant, and then they give you that student loan that I mentioned, and then they give a work study award. But then this college is one of those that doesn't meet 100% of full need, so they don't quite fill the bucket. So then you as a family, really, if your student is going to this college, you as a family need to come up with not just $5,000, but $12,500 to be able to send your student to college there. So these numbers are going to be critical for you to crunch in the spring, your second big task, to make sure that this decision is going to be a good one for everyone involved. And this is how this is going to look. Your student is going to get financial aid packages back that look widely different from college to college. So this is a very likely scenario. 3 colleges, even though they all cost the same, roughly the same, for this example the same, and they're getting 3 very different, you're one family, one financial situation, but you could get back 3 very different financial aid awards. So College A is one of those colleges that meets full need, so they're going to meet the need. College B is doing the best they can, but there's some unmet need on the bottom. And College C, there's even more unmet need on the bottom. So you're going to have to go through that and really figure out what is going to be financially doable for you and your student. And I've been asking this question at my seminars, so I'll ask it of you. We've all lived a long time. We know how life goes, right? If this is your scenario at your kitchen table, what do you think your child's first choice school is going to be? Right? We know. That's how life is. Maybe not 100% of the time, but this is how this conversation may go at your kitchen table in the spring, where your student will get a variety of awards, and the student is saying, but I like this one the best, and that's the one with the least money. So a lot of conversations can happen there, and I think one is you could go back to that school, and you probably should, and you can call them and you can let them know, or write to them, let them know this is my daughter's first choice and she likes it for X, Y, and Z reasons, or your daughter could call and say that herself. But we received all, this money from somewhere else, and not sure how we're going to do it. But when you have a conversation like that with an institution, maybe there's something they can ask you about, and maybe they can help you with that, or maybe they can't, and they might say, I'm sorry, that's, we put together this package. So you can always ask those questions, but you can't really have any expectations, because that answer will vary widely from college to college too. Another conversation you could have is to really talk to your student and say, well, let's go to the accepted students days at all of the colleges. Let's ask the questions. Maybe your second choice college or your third choice college have the program you need, you like them a lot, you like these other things about those institutions. Let's really try to keep an open mind, and let's see if it seems more workable from a financial standpoint. Can it be workable from an academic and social standpoint? And those are the type of conversations you can have so that it's an all-around good decision. I'll make a couple of points here, because I like this slide is a good place to show to talk about this too. So we talked about those outside scholarships that your student can apply for. And I sometimes get the question, well, if they apply, will that help us, or does that mean the college is just going to take money away? So that's a good conversation to have, I think. So let's say that your student does some work online and then applies for some of these scholarships here in Nantucket and finds $7,000 worth of outside scholarship money, which would be terrific. And let's say they're going to College C. That's no problem. They get to keep all of that. There's a lot of unmet need there. That's just going to help. 100% great. Let's say they're going to College B, $7,000. Great. Fits right in, unmet need, no problem. But if they're going to College A, which happens to meet full need, something has to happen with that package there. So what I would say the student should do in this specific scenario would be to call College A and say, I'd like to not take my loan or work study for this first year. And that way, $7,000 could fit in there. And they are giving up the loan and they're giving up work study, but they'd rather have the grant that they don't need to repay. So that would still work out fine. Let's say your student was even more diligent and found $10,000 worth of money to bring in. Well, then that's where, if the student is going to College A and has $10,000 of outside scholarships, that's where, after they take away the loan and work study, could cut into that grant or scholarship. So I just put that out there so you see the whole picture of it. But the truth is, you can see I named 3 scenarios, which is most, where it wouldn't be a problem at all. In just the one scenario, if your student is getting a really great financial aid package from a college that meets full need and they received a lot of outside scholarships, there could be an adjustment to the package that would make it not worthwhile. But I say, on the balance, it is a really, really good idea to find whatever outside money you can. It's only in those unique circumstances that might lower the award. And then this is another something that we like to show, because I believe it's really unethical and colleges should not do this, but we see it enough that we keep it in the presentation. So here are 3 colleges giving you a financial aid award, and if you looked at this quickly, which you wouldn't do because you're going to look at them very carefully, you would see that they look like, oh, they're giving us $35,000. They're all giving us $35,000, but they're not. Colleges sometimes will put something like they call a parent loan in the financial aid package. And I don't have to tell you that. That's not financial aid. There's something called a PLUS loan from the federal government, parent loan for undergraduate students, that you could choose to borrow to meet your EFC or meet those costs that we've been talking about. But it's not aid, it's not in the package. So you really want to, at this point, I keep saying the kitchen table, you get all the papers out on the kitchen table, you probably want to even put things into a spreadsheet and look at the costs from the different schools and the aid awarded and look at that bottom line. And then you might choose to borrow a parent loan, but that's not part of the aid package. So just be aware of that and really make sure you're comparing the different types of the awards. Yeah.
And also, I think you really should look at graduation rates of the school that you're sending your child to, because
Yes.
there are some that are really, they do that, and then it's not realistic. And so the graduation rate is lower, and that's not really.
So such a great point. And in fact, yeah, we don't have a slide on that. There's something called the College Scorecard, and I believe it's collegescorecard.gov. And that you can find out, in fact, we can look that up at the end if we have internet, I don't know. Or that gives lots of great information just like that, so that you can really make sure that all of that information is known before you're committing and deciding on dollars. Thank you
And
for
they'll
that.
also say that oh, the average student graduates with $19,000 worth of debt, but they're not counting the parent loan.
Yes,
So that's another trick that you need to be aware of.
that's great, that's great.
The information is also available on Naviance.
Naviance, great.
Have access to.
Okay, so that's great, yeah. And then there are other, so then let's talk about, okay, you've done all these things, you've had all these conversations, you've visited the colleges, asked all the questions, and you've come to a decision as a family. So let's say student chooses a school, is really happy, you're thinking, okay, I think we can do this, this seems okay. So let's say the balance due for your family is $20,000. So then you have to figure out, okay, how do we pay $20,000? And maybe you decided not. Maybe you made some other choices, so it wasn't that, but maybe, let's say in this case, it is. So then how would a family do that? And you're each gonna do that differently. But in general, this is basically how a parent would piece together enough money to come up with that. Maybe you have some savings that I talked about. If you have some savings, this is where you'll feel really happy that you have them to be able to put towards that bill, your part of the bill. Maybe the student has saved some money as well. So parent and student coming together with a little savings. And then this present income piece, all colleges have something called a monthly payment plan. There's no interest charged, it's not a loan, there's usually a fee like $60 or $75, and then you can just split up the cost over the course of the year. So maybe like this family decides, okay, we can pay $450 a month, and we're gonna do that for 10 months, so that kind of is part of it. But then this family says, okay, we still don't have $20,000. All right, we're going to borrow that parent loan or that private loan to make up the cost. And there we go. That might even at this amount, that might even seem fine. Maybe a payment on a $10,000 loan is about $100 a month. But then that's not it. You need to think about 4 years at least, right? But 4 years, because it usually isn't going to get better from year to year. We'll talk about the fact that you should be able to at least expect the same. So you have to think about 4 years. You have to think about other children. Here are all the things, right? So these are big conversations that you have to decide. Is this going to be financially feasible for us, and is it going to be financially feasible for the student? And the student needs to think about some things too. Like, not that the students need to know, you don't need to know what you're going to do after graduation or what job you're going to have exactly. But you might know a couple of different things. So I've been using the example of WPI in Worcester. Great engineering school, and they publish, that the average starting salary of graduates is fairly high. I'm making it up at this point, but something around like $80,000. And so maybe a student will say, I know I'm a hard worker, I know I want to be an engineer, I see I'm going to this school which shows that the graduating salaries are fairly high. Maybe that seems, even though you never know what can happen, that seems like a good bet as far as some borrowing and being able to pay that off. But there might be another student who might want to do some public service work, might want to go to grad school, all kinds of things like that. And that, you really need to just think about that, because you want to continue to keep your options open in the future. So you want to make sure you're making a good financial decision for you as the student and your parents as well. So these are not easy conversations, but truly, I visit all of the colleges in Massachusetts and have visited most of the colleges in New England. There are so many good options out there that keeping options and choices open, there's so many different places where you can be successful. So I think looking at it that way and knowing you're just going to make a good decision as a family all around is a way to go into this year. And, Massachusetts has done a lot to improve the whole path. If a student wants to start at a community college and then transfer to a 4-year college or university, or even transfer to a private institution. They've done a lot with the classes that transfer, the programs that transfer, and even put some financial benefit to it. So this website, Mass Transfer and Commonwealth Commitment, are options that students can look at and see how this significantly keeps the cost of education down by getting into a program like this, and right away talking with an advisor, talking with them about how you want to do your program and navigating it. And it's automatic admission to the 4-year schools if you're in this program, and then there are some cost savings as well if students keep certain GPAs. So I highly advise just taking a look at this and having this as one possibility or option. And then the tuition break piece is a program where if a student wants to go to a program in another state that the Massachusetts system doesn't have that program, you can go to another state and still get in-state tuition at a public institution in other states in New England. And for example, Maine, the University of Maine charges Massachusetts in-state rates to Massachusetts residents because they want to attract more people, more young people to come up to Maine. So there are things like that that can keep the costs down as well. Rhode Island also, but I'm trying to think, Rhode Island charges in-state rates in a radius that I know doesn't work for me, and I guess I'm not sure about Nantucket and where that falls in the Rhode Island public system, but that's something to look into as well. Okay, so we talked about the free resources, the appealing the award. I think I talked about that enough, and more than that, I guess I would just say, once you apply for financial aid, if anything changes in your situation or happens anywhere along the line, absolutely you want to talk with the financial aid office as a first stop to see if they can help you once you've applied. And along those lines, when you get those financial aid award letters or when you finally pick a school and decide, all right, this is the school, you want to make sure you feel comfortable that the award that's there is going to be roughly what you can expect for the 4 years or 2 years or 6 years, however. And hopefully the documentation with the award letter says that, but if it doesn't, that's a conversation with the financial aid office as well. And the answer you want is that if your financial situation stays the same, you should be able to expect the same need-based money. And if your student receives a merit-based scholarship, they might say it might be tied to a certain GPA. So your student might have to keep a 3.0 GPA to keep that merit scholarship. But that's something to know up front too. So that's another conversation to have. And then, I mentioned if you have any problems filling out the FAFSA or the profile, you can call MIFA. There are other places you can call as well to get help with that. And here are some scholarship websites as well. And does Naviance have scholarship? No, okay. So some scholarship websites. And what I usually say about filling out the forms is to complete them as best you can, keep saving them, and maybe write down your questions, and then you can kind of make a phone call and we can help you with your questions. And if you're signed up for our emails, we'll also share a lot more information in the spring about, say, comparing those awards. We have a calculator on our website where you can type the awards in and make sure you know what the bottom line is, all of that. And this is what those emails look like.
Will you go back for
Yeah, sorry.
one more? Yeah.
Oh, good. So I talked a lot. What questions do you have? And there's always something I forgot to say or cover.
So is all this slide that you just showed us, is that all online or no? You just have it? All
Let-
the information that you just looked at?
Yes, so all these websites, you can go to all these scholarship websites you can find. Can I,
If you share it with me, I'll post it.
we'll share the presentation so you can get it all. That's great.
Because I can't write that.
Definitely will share it, that's good.
Thank you.
Yes.
If your student decides to take a gap year, how does that affect any of this?
That's great. So if your student takes a gap year, then you could just avoid all of this right now and you'd be doing it next year. Or if that's still up in the air and a decision, I guess you could go through all of this. Then you would see what financial aid awards came back. That would also give you a sense, but nothing would be, you would have to do it all prior to the year that the student was going to enroll. So you'd have to do it all next year.
So if you just got in and got an award and then deferred, would you still keep?
So, yeah, you wouldn't be able to keep the award because it's tied, unless there might be a school that would say you could keep a merit-based award or something. So I don't want to say 100%. You could talk to the financial aid office and they might say, well, next year you'll still get this merit-based award. But any of the need-based money is all tied to the 2017 income, so you'd have to do it again for the following year. Overwhelmed? I take it I probably didn't make you feel more relaxed. Yeah.
We're parents of a junior, so really almost all this paperwork stuff and all, there's no reason to get going on it until about a year from today.
Exactly.
Although no harm. I really think the time is going to come up for us to go see some colleges with it between now and the next year, and that's useful.
Yeah, I would say those net price calculators are useful so that, as you're visiting colleges, you just have in the back of, as a family, you have in the back of your mind, what it could look like financially at certain schools as you're going through.
Right.
Yeah, and you can ask those questions when you're on those tours and information sessions about need-based aid, merit-based aid, all of that.
How will you get that information back? I mean, it could be doing the tour around, would they just say our average student gets 40% from us, or?
Yeah, or they'd tell you, we have a significant amount of merit-based aid, or we have no merit-based aid.
Fairly general, but
Yeah,
able to fit in.
yeah. But then you'd be able to piece together all, to have a sense.
So there's still, our older daughter who's in school now got the Abigail Adams Mass State free tuition deal. Is that still?
It is, so I should mention that, so thank you. Yeah, so for students who go to the public colleges or universities, if, it depends on, it's MCAS score driven, but if your student was in the top of the MCAS scores, they can get the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, which is free tuition at the public colleges. But I do this because the public colleges and universities, their fee structure is tuition and fees. So it doesn't cover everything. It covers around $2,000 or so, but that can be a real help. So if your student is eligible for that, that's a great merit-based award.
I went back to school late in life, and so I was using the FAFSA not so long ago. And I probably have an ID then. Oh, yeah. So it's gonna be the same ID that I'm gonna connect to?
Yeah, that's great. So if you have an FSA ID, for yourself, yes, you can still use that. I would say still, student go in first, create yours, and then you'll be able to use, then you go in second. At least that's how I did it, and it seemed to work pretty smoothly. And then you go in, and because you already have it, you can put that right in. Good.
So I just wanted to make a point as well. We
Yeah.
just finished up last week our senior seminars. We went into all of the senior English classes and did a presentation, which is also available on the guidance website, and went through the whole application process and talked a lot about the Naviance program. Now, hopefully by now, 4 years in, you have all heard of the Naviance program. It is an online program that we're very fortunate to offer to our students here at Nantucket. It is a cost to us, and it's a significant one, so we're a lucky district to have it. So we always encourage our students to go on there. There's lots of different activities or ways for your student to look at a career interest inventory or a personality profiler to help steer them in the right way of what major they might want to do or study in college. But there is a really good comprehensive college search on there as well that we pointed out to them. And what's pretty neat is that this database collects all the data from past Nantucket High students who have applied to those schools, the same schools that you'll be looking at and researching. So there's a really nice scattergram on there that shows on a graph, on one side their GPA and on the bottom their SAT or ACT scores. And it kind of compares, it turns our students into X's and O's and such, but it's a green check, that means they got in. If it's a red X, they did not. And it kind of shows you where your GPA and SAT stand. So we like to encourage students to use this as a way to create their college list, to find their safety schools, middle of the road, and reach schools. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up tonight and now at a financial aid session is that you wonder, how do I apply to a school that I'm going to get the most amount of money out of? And the schools that you're going to get the most amount of money out of are the schools that your academic profile exceeds their median scores. So say your student has a 3.8 and this particular school has an average GPA of a 3.0 or 3.2, then that college is going to really want your student to go there because they're bringing up the averages of their academic profile. So that's where we kind of get those thoughts of safety schools, middle of the road schools, and reach schools. But then again, I have to say that we also talk about not only safety, middle of the road, and reach schools for academic purposes, but also for financial purposes. That you want to apply to a range of schools that have different costs, some public schools, some private schools. And again, as we will say this, we've said this to your students, and I'm going to say it again, if you find a school to be a reach school, whether it be financial or academic, that is not a reason to not apply, and we would never say that to someone. But know that the cost might be more than what you're expecting. However, this is where that kick comes in. Private schools have more money, private schools cost more, but they have more money to give out. So that being said, don't shy away from applying to a couple schools that might be out of your price range because you think that they might not make it. But if your academic profile is such that they're going to give you a lot of money, then that need could be met, and you could get a better financial aid package at a school that costs $70,000 versus a school that costs $30,000. So that's why we like to just make sure that you're keeping your eyes and ears and your thoughts open about where to apply. Make sure that you're applying to schools that you know that you can't afford if you don't get aid as a safety, but also don't be afraid to reach out to those more expensive schools, but know that it might be a reach, or maybe it's not. We just never know, because their equations
so true.
and mathematic calculations are different for everyone. So just to keep that in mind. Yeah.
That's great.
And I think,
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I know that it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But we thank you so much for coming.
Oh,
Julie.
thank you, and good luck with everything.
And have a good evening. Go Whalers. Happy homecoming.
Yes.
Yeah.